Why, hello, learning nerds. Before we begin today's show, I want to thank our awesome sponsors, with first giving a shout out to Idle Courses Academy. Idle Academy is the first and only authorized vocational school for instructional design and online learning. It includes a comprehensive hands-on curriculum with certifications, credentials, expert coaches, mentors, a community of practice, paid experience opportunities, industry-preferred software access, live events, and ongoing updates. Your entire instructional design career is neatly packaged behind a single login for just $88 a month. Check out all the details at idlecourses.com/academy, and you can use my code Luke for $88 off the yearly membership. Okay, now let's start the show. Hello, learning nerds, and welcome on in to the nerdiest podcast you're going to hear today. My name is Dr. Luke Hobson, and my mission is to be able to help you when it comes to designing learning experiences. Really, from all angles: teaching, designing, learning, everything in between, and of course, to be able to help you out with your instructional design career. And you can always find all of the resources that I have for you over at drlukehobson.com. You may have noticed recently, but the podcast is undergoing a rebrand. I'm really getting into the purple and whites. I absolutely love the colors, the contrast. Never thought that I would be diving on into purple, but you know what? That is just what's speaking to me at 35. So that is what we are going to be going with, and you're going to be seeing more and more of these colors. I've heard from so many of you about how much you also enjoy the color purple. Fun fact, did not know how many of you also like this color. So hey, I hope you've been enjoying the rebrand, and stay tuned as we have a little bit more things to come. We're trying to be able to rebrand all the resources and offerings and everything else of the sort. And today's podcast episode is talking about the 3 worst pieces of advice for transitioning to instructional design. This comes from the place where I was mindlessly scrolling up and down on LinkedIn the other day, where I came across a post and it had a ton of traction. And I was like, okay, interesting. Let me go look at this. And it was from a person who had one of the LinkedIn's blue top voice badges. And that is not to be confused with the type of a top voice badge. That's that little yellow light bulb that LinkedIn gives you for contributing to articles. The blue top voice badge means that LinkedIn recognizes you as a person of influence, as a thought leader in your space, and they are the ones who can give it to you. There's no way for you to try to manually be able to get this type of a badge. Now, this person, who was not an instructional designer, by the way, was giving advice to teachers on how to transition and how to go into a couple of different roles. And one of them that they called out was for instructional design. And I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It wasn't just bad advice, it was insanely bad advice. There were things that I would never recommend. And it's a reminder that, hey, there's a ton of bad advice out there, even from some people who LinkedIn thinks is a top voice inside of their own space. And it's also a reminder there's plenty of outdated advice that's still circling online. And of course, times have changed, and the advice needs to be revised to help folks with what they need currently today in 2024. From scouring the internet, I came across 3 pieces of advice that are a surefire way to be stuck in job transitioning limbo for forever. So let's go through these, discuss their merit, and get you down the right path for success if you want to become an instructional designer. Bad advice number 1, guess I'll call it that. Yeah, we'll go with that, is that it's easy to transition. There is no world where it's easy to transition from one job to another. Anyone who says it's easy, quote unquote, has never experienced the massive roller coaster of emotions of trying to land a new job. And I can see the argument that at one point in time, it was easier to transition because of the pandemic and the surplus of instructional design jobs. This forever changed the landscape of instructional design. The job market, honestly, is it's quite confusing right now. On one hand, LinkedIn published an article that two of the hottest jobs in 2024 are instructional design related. So great, we're going in the right direction. On the other hand, jobs aren't falling out of the sky anymore. The surplus of jobs created the surplus of applicants, therefore creating less opportunities to interview. On top of this, there have also been massive layoffs from higher education to corporate America, meaning even more candidates are applying for jobs. All of this is to say that, of course, it's not easy to transition. Those who did transition recently over the last couple of years, they worked their butts off to make it happen, with upskilling, creating portfolios, practicing interviewing, networking, and things of this nature. There is also a significant amount of luck that goes into this. And to be clear, luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. Yeah, you know that quote that you've probably heard all of your life? I mean, in my opinion, it's true. The more luck that you can create, the better the chances of finding the right job for you. The second bad piece of advice is only focus on authoring tools. Ah, yes. Just learn Storyline and you'll instantly become an instructional designer. Why haven't I thought of that before? And I'm picking on Storyline specifically because this is the one authoring tool that gets mentioned more than any of them. And there are certainly tons of authoring tools out there. Here's the thing. There is so much more to designing learning experiences than authoring tools. It's usually the last step in the design process, not the first. Instructional design has existed far before authoring tools. And if you don't believe me, look at any of the instructional designers who have been publishing about their work for decades. They aren't hitting home about the need for authoring tools. They are far more concerned with research, results, performance, learning, project management, collaboration with stakeholders, with SMEs. It's things like that they have been writing about for quite some time. Tech has become a valuable ally for us in instructional design land, and it should not be forgotten about. To be clear, but you can become an instructional designer without really using that many authoring tools. And I can hear some of you now, but Luke, this job posting calls out Storyline. I get that. And by all means, you can learn how to use this tool through LinkedIn Learning, YouTube, or other ways. You should, if you actually really want to learn how to use Storyline in particular. Mark Spearman on YouTube has like 100 videos on how to use Storyline. It's essentially a masterclass on how to use Storyline. And so does Christy Tucker. She has plenty of things as well. Devlin Peck has a bunch on YouTube. There are a ton of free resources that exist around how to use Storyline. And I won't discourage you from learning this tool or Rise or 7Taps, Genially, H5P, iSpring, or any of the other popular tools that do exist. There is nothing wrong with using authoring tools. Having this skill set is helpful, and you should include tech in your portfolio to let people see that you can actually use these tools. But here's the thing. As a hiring manager, I know anyone can learn how to use a tool. I am confident that if I gave you 30 days how to learn how to use Rise 360, I'm sure you would learn it probably in 2 because it's very easy to use. Knowing how to design learning for adults, manage complex problems, communicate with stakeholders, evaluate results, rethink workflows, research trends, and other similar skills are far more valuable in my opinion, and that's what I'm trying to be able to hear from an interview perspective. The only exception to this, in my opinion, if you just want to go completely headfirst into authoring tools, is to find an e-learning job. Because an e-learning job revolves around authoring tools, not all the other things that I mentioned about. It could, but usually an e-learning role is very clearly someone who uses an authoring tool. And hey, if you love tools and tech, and that's what excites you, then go for one of these jobs in particular. And last but not least, the final piece of bad advice for the day is you must do X to become an instructional designer. There is no right way to become an instructional designer. Ask 50 instructional designers how they got to where they are today, and you're going to hear 50 different options. This is something that sounds like it baffles instructional designers, or I should say, aspiring instructional designers. And I completely get that. In what world does this actually make sense where this is reality? I understand why this is so confusing. You can either become an instructional designer on a shoestring budget while learning everything on your own, or you can do the exact opposite and you can pursue an academic calling and earn a bachelor's, a master's, or a doctorate in instructional design. The instructional design field is becoming what the graphic design field used to be like. And let me explain about this for a second, in case if you don't have a graphic design background, because I do. Much like instructional design, graphic design has been around for quite some time. While most people think graphic design is new because of technology and tools, the term graphic design was first coined in 1922. Everything changed in the 1950s because of the work of Paul Rand. Paul is the founding father of graphic design in the corporate world and primarily was self-taught. Yes, he was an educated person, but when it comes to these forms of designs, it was really all on him. And he developed logos and brandings for companies that I promise you know these logos if I say them right now. So let's do a little visual activity for a second. Do you know the logos for ABC, IBM, Westinghouse, Ford, UPS? Of course you do. Some of the biggest names that exist. The buzz around graphic design really began because of what Paul did inside of his corporate space and combining font and art into one. Before him, it really wasn't done. Now, of course, from there, the buzz of graphic design only grew and grew and grew, and this dramatically changed within the 90s and the 2000s because of products like Illustrator, Photoshop, and Flash. As this field became more popular, more jobs began to flood the market, and wouldn't you know it, all of these new ways to learn about graphic design popped up. You do not need to do now what Paul had to do with experimenting on his own. Instead, here's all these new options about learning graphic design. And this is all I can think about when learning about instructional design. I have a degree in graphic design, but I know of many amazing graphic designers who never went to school for graphic design or majored in a similar field and switched over. And no, I don't have a degree in instructional design, in case if you were wondering. Instructional design degrees weren't a thing when I first heard about instructional design, and instead I pursued my EDD. And the blend of graphic design and education paved the way for me to become an instructional designer. And once again, I know of many, many accidental instructional designers. But the times have changed, and I don't see an accidental instructional designer path being viable. And if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you've also heard me say the term the intentional instructional designer, because that's where all of you are going if you're trying to become an instructional designer today. This is all to say that one way does not guarantee success as an instructional designer. If you want to focus on being self-taught, volunteering, creating a rockstar portfolio, then go for it. If you want to pursue the academic path instead with a degree, you absolutely can. You also have more options than ever before with individual courses, certificate programs, boot camps, memberships, and more. You should follow the path that's best for you. If you want my exact guide on how to do this, you can read my ebook. It's still up on my website called So You Want to Become an Instructional Designer. That should help to point you in the right direction. And of course, if you have any questions, you can always reach out. And as a reminder, folks, the next run of Instructional Design Institute, we're going to be covering about the fundamentals of instructional design. Our 7-week type of learning experience is going to be launching again on March 4th. So if you have not yet applied, be sure to do so today. And like I was just saying, any questions, please feel free. Reach out to me and I'll go from there. Well, everybody, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I hope that you found it valuable. If you did, please be sure to leave a 5-star rating wherever you are listening. I am not picky. Apple, Spotify. Had to think about the other one. Overcast. I think that's another one. There's so many now. I can't keep up anymore. Wherever you are listening, rate the show. I appreciate it. And that's really all I have for you today. Hey folks, stay nerdy out there. And I'll talk to you next time.